What's up there? My name is Trent, and today in this video I want to talk about connecting different positions on the guitar. This is a question that came up in an email from a viewer that watches my content, and he was telling me about what he struggles with, and he explained that he's got a lot of background in music theory and understanding scales and arpeggios and modes and things, but what he still has a hard time with is moving fluently between the different areas of the guitar, which is super challenging. And because I thought this was relevant to a lot of different players, I thought I'd go into some of the ideas that help me move across the guitar and the ways that I think about it that help to diminish how big this problem can seem, because it can seem like there's infinite possibilities on the neck because of the way it's laid out and the way that visually there aren't a lot of cues as to what notes you're playing. But when you really dive into it and examine how many positions are actually possible, there's not as many as you would think. Because we have 6 strings within 1 octave of the guitar, so that would be between the open strings and the 12th fret, you're going to have one, if you don't include the 12th fret, you'll have one option for every note on every string. And that seems perfectly logical, but maybe you haven't thought of it that way. And this is kind of the angle from which I'm going to approach talking about moving to different positions on the guitar. There are a number of ways that you can do this. One is by using chords as anchor positions, which I've talked about in previous lessons, like thinking of a G major chord and then knowing your scale that surrounds just those notes of the chord, and knowing that for each of your inversions. And that gets you access to a couple of really great usable positions and a great way to follow chord changes if you're trying to learn how to play over moving harmony and to outline that harmony. That's one approach. Another approach would be to really dial in your single string scales so that you can always picture or visualize where you can go on the same string to remain in the same key. Like if I'm soloing here, I'm in G major, and if I know my single string scales, I could just travel up any of these strings till I get to a new position. And learning the intervals on a single string and being able to move through them is another great way to improve your overall understanding of how to connect the different areas of the fretboard. I just wanted to mention those because those are 2 ideas that you could explore further on your own. What I'm going to show you is actually a different approach using the root note of any chord that you're trying to play over as the starting point for improvisation, and using different root notes on different strings to move between positions. So I'm going to start at like a G major bar chord on the 3rd fret. And in this chord, I've got 3 G notes. I've got the 6th string, 3rd fret, I've got the 4th string, 5th fret, and I've got the 1st string on the 3rd fret. So this is a position where you could play your regular in position G major, 3rd position, because our first finger's at the 3rd fret, that's called 3rd position. You could play your 3rd position G major scale. So that is one position. So let's say you're comfortable with that one and you want to be able to move to the next position. My next root note up the neck, if I'm looking at all 6 strings, I got a G here, G here, G here. The next G up is going to be this one. This is 8th fret on the 2nd string. And now I'm connecting it by an octave to the 5th fret on the 4th string. So in this middle kind of section of the guitar, I've got these 2 root notes. So now I'm connected to a couple of different things. Whereas like here, in this first position, I could think of my major pentatonic shape from G, or I could think like I showed of my in position, third in position G major scale. Up here, I've got the next position of the pentatonic that I can fall into, which contains both of these root notes, or I've got a 3-note per string scale, which would be the second position of the G major scale here. That covers the same thing. But really the point is, moving up to this position, I'm going to visualize my patterns surrounding these root notes. So I've got here, I can improvise along those root notes. Then I've got this next position is going to be focused around these root notes. So a way that I might practice these two positions together would be to create some kind of line or scale pattern where I'm forced to switch between them. So here's an example. I use kind of a major scale and a pentatonic pattern there to connect to these two positions, but all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to gain access to not only this whole area here, but also the next area. And you might be able to see how we could do this moving up the neck through the 7 positions of the major scale, because there are 7 different patterns. Because there's 7 notes in the scale, you can start one pattern from each note. So moving on, now I'm here. I've got these two, and these 2 G notes. I went from here to here, and if I keep this one and I move to the next G up the neck, this is going to be on the 5th string at the 10th fret. And now I'm at the next position, in position scale. This would be the 3rd position of G major. But really what I'm thinking of is focusing on this root note and now this one. So I want to take a quick sidetrack and just tell you about the importance of intervallic thinking. So intervallic thinking is thinking in terms of intervals. And an interval, in case you need a review or you aren't familiar, an interval is what we call the distance between 2 notes or 2 sounds. So you take 2 sounds, 2 tones, musical tones like this and this, and there's a specific amount of sonic distance between those two, and each of the different distances has a specific name. So if that's brand new to you, don't worry about it. It's probably a bit confusing, but if you're familiar with the concept of intervals and you may know the names of them, this is the most important underlying factor behind my playing and my understanding of music and my ability to play over different chord changes and patterns, is this thinking in intervals. Because if I'm looking at any of these notes, say I'm on G here, and I want to play a scale pattern moving up from there, I'm going to need to know which notes will work. And how do I know that? I could think, oh, I'm in G, so A and B and C and D, and so on. That is one way to think about it. And that is how I would think about it if I was playing piano mostly. I would still be thinking of the intervals, but piano is just so cut and dry. G looks like a G, and you can't really mistake it once you learn it. Once you learn it, you're not going to forget what a G looks like. Guitar is not the same. So thinking intervallically, or thinking in terms of the intervals, really helps you navigate around the instrument. So if I'm thinking I'm doing a major scale and I know that I got to go a major second or a whole step to the next note of the scale, I got to go another whole step, and I know, oh, I'm going between these 2 strings. A whole step is like that, on between these 2 strings. Then a half step, whole step. Anyway, intervals are extremely important, and if you aren't familiar with the different interval names, leave me a comment and I'll make a video explaining how I think about these things. Back to the idea of moving between positions. So I've got my first position here, these G notes, which allow me a couple of different options for what notes to play around them. I've got this one here, which, like I said, connects to the second shape, major shape of the pentatonic, or the second shape of the G major in position. Then I have here, which would correspond to the third in position, G major scale shape. Then here, I can put my first finger here, and now I've got, I'm moving from this G, now I'm focusing around the G at the 12th fret. I've got G at the 10th fret of the 5th string and G at the 12th fret of the 3rd string. And now I'm looking at the next pentatonic shape, which would be shape, well, from G major, that'd be shape 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally I think of that as shape 5 because I normally think of pentatonics from the relative minor root. But at any rate. Anyway, you can see that each of these positions corresponds to one of the in position scales or one of the pentatonic patterns. And so I'm going to take a different key. I'm going to take B flat major. And I'm just going to kind of think about what would be the primary position that most people would end up playing in for this chord. And I guess what I would think is probably like what you'd think of as a G minor pentatonic, aka B flat major pentatonic. So if I am soloing over B flat, and I'm using this position for B flat major pentatonic, one way I could go up to the next position is think of, okay, I've got a root note up here. So if I shift my position from here, I'm going to go up the scale 1, 2, 3. And now I'm in this position. Now I've got this B flat on top, and I got this one here, and this one here. So I've shifted from this one, and this one, to now being on this one, this one, and this one. And my shape would change. So what I would do to get familiar with that change is I would improvise over here on B flat for a while. Then switch to the next position. Switch back. And I'm doing 2 measures on each. So I was going back 2 measures, back and forth. 2 measures on the first position, 2 measures on the next position, trying to just work that connection. And that's really, that covers from here, you know, from 3rd position to 6th position. So if I was going again, trying to go up again, I could use this B flat note and go 1, 2, 3. And then if I know my intervals, I would know that I'm on the 3rd. Major 3rd down for me is a B flat. Here's another B flat. So I could use a position here. And now instead of this B flat and this B flat, I'm focused on these 2. And it continues like that. Like here, I'm going to keep this one that's on a higher fret, 11th fret. I'm going to move this B flat to here. And I've got another position. And so if I just keep doing that here, if I do that again, I'm moving this B flat to here, I'm back where I started there. If I do it one more time, then I'm back to this an octave up. So my general point here is to look at the guitar neck in an analytical sort of way. Look at the different places you can find a certain note across the different strings. Try playing in those positions, playing off of those notes with different fingers. Think of fragments of scales. You don't need to think in the entire big scale, because as you learn the fragments, you're going to get better at hearing the intervals. And when you get better at hearing the intervals, it's a lot easier to just play across the fretboard, because you already will know where you need to go. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, I've got a free mini course on my site called Pentatonic Pathways that's geared towards this same idea of increasing fluency across different areas of the neck. And so if you haven't checked that out, I think it's probably worth spending some time looking at those exercises, because that will help you, in a context of a pentatonic scale, build up some of the connections that can help you move across the neck more fluidly. So that's at practicemakesbettermusic.com. And until next time, keep practicing. See ya.